A wrong number voicemail revealed why my wife keeps the basement locked. That's the headline, right? The kind of thing that makes you click, makes you wonder. Except this isn't some clickbait garbage. This is my life, or what's left of it. It all started with a Tuesday, just a regular Tuesday. I was making coffee, the cheap diner roast kind, the one that smells like burnt pennies but gets the job done. Sun was just starting to cut through the blinds in our kitchen, painting those dusty stripes across the counter. Sarah, my wife, she was already gone, out for her early morning run. She always went early, before the heat really settled in, before the world got too loud. I remember thinking, as I poured that first scalding cup, how lucky I was. She's a good person. Always has been. Driven, organized, kind. The kind of woman who remembers birthdays and knows the exact right thing to say when your mom's in the hospital. The kind of woman who makes you feel like you're a better man just by knowing her. We'd been married 8 years. 8 good years. Living in this house, the one with the porch swing and the oak tree in the front yard, the one we bought with dreams of someday having kids. We'd talked about it a lot, kids. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. Sarah had some health stuff a few years back. Nothing major, but enough to put that dream on hold. We were okay with it. We had each other. We had our routines, our comfortable silence, our basement. And speaking of the basement, if you're finding yourself drawn into this story, if you're feeling that pull of curiosity, that need to know what happens next, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, give this a like, maybe even share it with someone you think might understand. Your comments mean a lot too, knowing I'm not just shouting into the void. It helps. It really does. Anyway, the basement. Sarah kept it locked. Always. Ever since we moved in, actually. It wasn't a big deal at first, just one of those quirks. She said it was for storage, that she wanted to organize it properly before I went down there. "It's a disaster zone, honey," she'd say with that little laugh. "Let me get it sorted, okay?" And I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was Sarah. She didn't lie. She didn't have secrets. Not from me. I'd even offered to help. "Nah, I got it," she'd always reply. A little too quickly, maybe. A little too firmly. I'd chalked it up to her perfectionism. She liked things just so. A place for everything, and everything in its place. The basement was just not there yet. It was a project. A Sarah project. That Tuesday, I was scrolling through my phone, half awake, waiting for the coffee to kick in. Sarah's phone was on the charger, right next to mine. It's funny, the little things you notice. The way her screen protector had a tiny crack near the corner from when she dropped it last month. The way the battery icon was a little green sliver.
And then her phone buzzed. A notification. Not a text, not a call. A voicemail. I never check her phone. Never. It's not that I don't trust her, it's her phone. Private. But this buzz was insistent, and it was different. It wasn't her usual notification sound. It was a more urgent tone, almost a double beep. Without even thinking, my thumb hovered over the screen. It was right there, the preview. Usually, it just shows a name or a number, but this one, it showed a snippet of audio, a soundbite. It was a man's voice, deep, raspy, like he'd been shouting or crying. It was distorted, like the phone was muffled, or maybe he was underwater. But I heard the words, clear as day. He said, "Sarah, honey, please, you gotta let me. The basement, it's not safe, not with them." Then, a sharp intake of breath, a choked sob, and silence. The recording was only about 10 seconds long, 10 seconds that shattered my entire world. My heart, it stopped, then it started pounding like a drum against my ribs. My hands started to shake. The coffee mug rattled in my hand, sloshing lukewarm liquid onto the counter. Who was this? What was he talking about? The basement? Our basement? Sarah had never mentioned anyone being in danger. She'd never mentioned any them. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. A wrong number. That had to be it. A wrong number, a drunk guy, a prank call. But the way he said her name, Sarah, it wasn't just a random name. It was intimate. And the desperation in his voice, it felt real.
too real. I picked up her phone. My fingers felt clumsy, like they belonged to someone else. I opened the voicemail app. The message was still there. The man's name, it just said unknown number. Of course it did. I hit play again. Sarah, honey, please, you gotta let me. The basement, it's not safe. Not with them. The same words, the same desperation. This time I focused on the background noise. Was that water, or was it a faint hum like machinery? It was hard to tell, it was so muffled, but there was definitely something there, something I couldn't quite identify. And then I heard it, or thought I heard it, a faint rhythmic thudding, like someone or something beating against a door. My stomach churned. This was not okay. This was so not okay. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was an old recording. Maybe he had the wrong Sarah. But the timing, the fact that it came to her phone this morning, it was too much of a coincidence. I looked at the clock on the microwave, 6:15 a.m. Sarah would be back any minute. What was I supposed to do? Confront her. Hey, honey, random guy called about the basement not being safe. Who are them? She'd think I was crazy. Or worse, she'd lie. I'm not proud of what I did next. It was a violation, but I couldn't help myself. I scrolled through her call log. No missed calls from this unknown number. No outgoing calls. It was like it had never happened, except for that damn voicemail.
I looked through her recent texts. Nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. Just work stuff, a few friends, the occasional love you from me. She was meticulous. Her digital life was as organized as her physical life. No digital breadcrumbs. I went back to the voicemail. I tapped on the little eye icon next to the message. I was hoping for some metadata, a location, a timestamp beyond just earlier today. But there was nothing, just the date and time received, and the fact that it was a voicemail. I heard her keys jingle in the lock. My body tensed. Sarah, back from a run. I quickly put our phone back on the charger, my heart still hammering. I tried to smooth my expression, to erase the panic. I grabbed a dish towel and started wiping up the spilled coffee, my movements jerky. She walked into the kitchen, a little flushed, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked normal, beautiful even. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, her voice warm. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, her lips cool and damp. "Coffee smells good?" I forced a smile. "Morning, just brewed a fresh pot." I watched her pour herself a mug, her movements graceful and efficient. She sat down at the table, stretching her legs out. "Long run today. Felt good? The air is crisp." I leaned against the counter, trying to appear casual. "Hear anything interesting on your run?" It was a stupid question, I knew, but it was the only thing I could think of. She took a sip of her coffee, her brow furrowing slightly. "Interesting? Like what?" "I don't know," I mumbled, looking down at the counter. "Just, sometimes you hear things. Birds, people." She laughed, a light, airy sound that grated on my nerves. Just the usual, honey, mostly just my own breathing and the sound of my feet hitting the pavement. She looked at me, her expression shifting from amusement to concern. "You okay? You seem a little off." I swallowed. "Yeah, fine. Just that coffee spill made me jump." She smiled, a reassuring smile. "Don't worry about it. I'll clean it up later." She took another sip, then set the mug down. Her eyes, a clear, bright blue, met mine. And for a second, I saw something flicker in them, a shadow, something I'd never seen before. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her usual warmth. But it was there. I'd seen it. "So," she said, her voice a little too bright, "what are your plans for today?" My plans. My plans had just been completely rewritten by a 10-second audio file. I needed to know. I needed to know what was in that basement. I needed to know who was talking to my wife, and I needed to know why she kept it locked. I was thinking, I started, my voice feeling strangely thick. Maybe we could finally tackle the basement today. You know, get it organized. I have some free time. Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, but I saw it. "Oh," she said, her tone suddenly a little strained. "That's a surprise."
I thought we'd decided to hold off on that for a while. Did we? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. I don't remember that. I think it's time we finally dealt with it. My gaze flickered towards the basement door, the solid, unassuming door at the end of the hallway that had always been just a part of the house. Now it felt like a wall, a barrier. She stood up, moving towards me. She placed a hand on my arm, her touch warm and familiar, yet suddenly alien. "Honey, it's really not a good time. I've got a lot on my plate with work right now, and besides, it's such a mess, it'll take days. Let's just do it another weekend, okay? Her words were smooth, reasonable, but the flicker in her eyes, the slight tension in her jaw, it was all wrong. She was deflecting, and the more she deflected, the more I knew I had to know. The man's voice, the fear, the mention of them and the basement, it was all crashing down on me. This wasn't just a quirky habit. This was something else, something big. And I was standing on the edge of it, a terrible, gnawing suspicion taking root in my gut. "No," I said, my voice firm. I gently pulled my arm away from her. "I think we need to do it today. I want to see what's down there." I took a step towards the basement door, my eyes locked on it. Sarah's breath hitched. Her face, which had been so open and warm moments before, was now a mask of something I couldn't quite decipher. Fear? Anger? Resignation? "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Then help me understand, Sarah," I said, turning to face her, my voice low and intense. "What are you hiding in the basement? What was that voicemail? Who was that man?" She looked at me, her eyes wide and glistening, like she was about to cry. But she didn't say anything. She just stood there, frozen, the silence between us stretching, thick with unspoken questions and a fear I could now taste in the air. The sun had climbed higher, but the shadows in our kitchen, in our lives, were growing longer, and I knew with a chilling certainty that the locked door was only the beginning. The real secrets were about to be unearthed, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what lay on the other side. My voice, it was a stranger's voice. Low, tight, devoid of any of the usual warmth, the easy affection that had been the bedrock of our life. I saw her eyes, usually so open, so clear, shudder over, a momentary, almost imperceptible flinch. It was like watching a bird suddenly freeze, caught in the glare of headlights. Then, the mask snapped back into place, but the imprint of that raw, unprotected fear lingered. She looked away, her gaze drifting to the window, to the cheerful morning sun that felt like a cruel mockery of the darkness churning inside me. "There's nothing down there, John," she said, her voice regaining its practiced calm, but with a slight tremor that betrayed her. "It's just old junk, stuff we don't need."
I told you I want to get it organized properly. She wrung her hands together, a gesture so uncharacteristic it screamed guilt. Sarah wasn't a hand-wringer. She was decisive. She was in control. This was new. This was a crack in the foundation. "Old junk doesn't get voicemails from panicked men, Sarah," I shot back, my own voice rising, the controlled anger boiling over. "And them? Who are them? Who is that guy? And why is he talking about the basement not being safe?" The questions tumbled out, a torrent I couldn't hold back, each one a hammer blow against the carefully constructed facade of our life. I took another step towards the basement door, my hand reaching for the knob. It was a simple, brushed nickel handle, nothing special. But in that moment, it felt like the gateway to a forbidden realm. Her breath hitched again. "John, please," she pleaded, her voice laced with a desperation that mirrored the man on the voicemail. "Don't do this. Not today. We can talk about it later. I'll explain everything." "Later? When, Sarah? When you finally decide to tell me the truth? Or when that guy calls back to tell me them have finally gotten in?" The sarcasm was bitter, laced with the dawning horror of what this might mean. Was she in danger? Was I in danger? The image of that frantic voice, the muffled sound of what could have been banging, it replayed in my mind, a loop of pure dread. She didn't answer. She just stood there, her shoulders hunched, her face pale. The silence stretched, taut and suffocating. I could feel the unspoken words hanging between us, heavier than any physical object. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years, I didn't recognize the woman standing before me. The Sarah I knew was honest, open, my confidant. This Sarah was a stranger, guarding a secret so profound it had driven a wedge between us. My fingers closed around the cold metal of the doorknob. It felt solid, real, a tangible point of focus in the swirling chaos of my thoughts. I took a deep breath, the stale air of the kitchen doing little to calm my racing heart. "I'm going down there, Sarah,"
I said, my voice low and steady, a stark contrast to the storm raging within me. And you can either come with me and explain, or you can stay up here and let me find out for myself. I didn't wait for her response. I turned the knob. It clicked, a small, sharp sound that echoed in the sudden stillness. The door creaked open, revealing a steep flight of wooden stairs descending into darkness. A faint, musty smell, the familiar scent of damp concrete and forgotten things, wafted up. But beneath it, there was something else. A faint, metallic tang, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Sarah gasped. It was a soft sound, a fragile puff of hair. I could feel her presence behind me, a nervous energy radiating from her. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My eyes were fixed on the shadow depths below.
I reached for the light switch, my hand trembling slightly. I flicked it on. A single bare bulb flickered to life, casting harsh shadows across the cramped space. It illuminated rows of dusty cardboard boxes stacked haphazardly, an old workbench covered in cobwebs, a discarded washing machine, the usual detritus of a basement. Nothing overtly sinister, nothing to explain the voicemail, nothing to explain Sarah's fear. But then my gaze fell on the far corner, tucked away behind a stack of old paint cans. The wall there, it looked different. The concrete was rougher, newer looking, almost like it had been patched recently. And there was a door, a small metal door set flush with the wall. It was painted a dark, nondescript gray, and it had a heavy-duty lock on it. A padlock, actually. A thick, industrial-looking padlock. "What is that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It was a question aimed at Sarah, but also at myself. It was a question that felt like it held the key to everything. Sarah finally moved. She stepped past me, her movements stiff, almost robotic. She stopped a few feet away from the door, her back to me, her gaze fixed on it. She didn't speak. The silence was deafening. I walked towards the metal door, my footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. The metallic tang was stronger here. I leaned closer, my nose almost touching the cold metal. It smelled coppery, like old blood. My stomach clenched. "Sarah," I said, my voice hoarse. "What is this? What's behind this door?" She finally turned, her face a mask of pain and exhaustion. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and there were dark circles under them. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. It's not what you think, John." "Then tell me what it is," I demanded, my patience worn thin. "Tell me what you're hiding." She took a shaky breath. It's a safe room. Or it was meant to be. A place to keep things safe." "Keep what safe, Sarah? From who? From them?" The word felt like poison on my tongue. She shook her head, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "It's complicated. It started a few years ago, after my treatments. I was vulnerable. And then some people, they got wind of certain things. Things I was involved in before we met." My mind reeled. "Things you were involved in? What things, Sarah? You never told me." "I couldn't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It was dangerous, and I wanted to protect you. I wanted our life to be normal, untainted." She gestured vaguely towards the locked door. "There were assets, information, things that certain people wanted very badly, and they weren't the kind of people who took no for an answer." My head was spinning. Assets? Information? Dangerous people? This wasn't the Sarah I knew. This was a character from a spy novel. "What kind of people, Sarah? What are you talking about?" She sank onto a dusty box, burying her face in her hands. Her body shook with silent sobs. I used to work for a government contractor before my health issues.
Why didn't you tell me, Sarah? I whispered, my own voice thick with emotion. We're supposed to be a team. We face things together. She pulled away slightly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Her gaze met mine, and in her eyes I saw a flicker of the old Sarah, mixed with something new. A weariness, a profound sadness, and a desperate plea for understanding. Because I was scared, John. I was so scared of losing you, of them finding out about this and coming after us. I thought if I kept it hidden, if I compartmentalized it, it would eventually go away, that they'd give up. She gestured to the locked door. This was my way of keeping them out, of keeping us safe. I looked at the metal door again. It wasn't just a locked door anymore. It was a symbol of her hidden life, of the danger she'd been facing, of the trust that had been fractured. The metallic tang still hung in the air, a constant reminder of the unknown. Who were they, Sarah? I asked, my voice regaining its edge, but this time it was laced with a cold, hard determination. Who are these people you're so afraid of? She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. They're an organization, not officially recognized. They operate in the shadows. They're involved in illicit activities, and they wanted what I had, what I was holding from my former employers. And what exactly do you have in there? I pressed, my gaze fixed on the padlock. She stood up, walking slowly towards the door. She reached into the pocket of her running pants and pulled out a small, tarnished silver key. She held it out to me, her hand trembling. The original key is long gone. This is a spare I had made. It's the only way in. But I need you to understand, John. Once you open that door, there's no going back. You'll know what I've been dealing with, and you'll be involved, whether you want to be or not. I looked at the key, then at Sarah. Her face was a mixture of fear and resignation. The gamble she was taking, revealing this to me, was immense. She was trusting me with her life, with her secret, with a truth so dangerous it had kept her awake at night. My hand closed around the cool metal of the key. The weight of it felt significant, like the weight of all her secrets. I could feel Sarah watching me, her breath held tight. The air in the basement was thick with anticipation, with the unknown. The single bulb cast long, dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and twist, like unseen eyes watching us. I took a deep breath and walked towards the metal door. The padlock glinted under the dim light. I inserted the key, my hand steady despite the tremor in my heart. It turned with a satisfying click. The tumbler shifted. The lock disengaged. I pulled the padlock free, the heavy metal clanging against the concrete. Sarah gasped again, a sharp, sharp intake of breath. I looked at her, and in her eyes, I saw a flicker of hope, but also a profound terror.
I reached for the handle of the metal door. It was cold, unyielding. I pulled. The door swung inward with a low, groaning protest, revealing not just a room, but a vortex of questions that threatened to swallow me whole. The metallic tang was overpowering now, acrid and sharp. The dim light from the main basement bulb barely penetrated the darkness within, but I could see shapes, bulky, heavy shapes, wrapped in thick, dark material. And something else, something that glinted. A series of metallic containers. They were stacked neatly, precisely, against the far wall, each one sealed with a thick, dark tape. They looked clinical, like evidence. Then, I heard it. A faint, almost inaudible whirring sound. It was coming from deeper within the room, from behind the stacked containers. A low,
rhythmic pulse, like a slow, steady heartbeat, and with it, a faint, almost imperceptible hum, a mechanical sound. My eyes scanned the limited space. The walls were bare concrete, no windows, no other doors, just this confined space, filled with these mysterious, shrouded objects and the unsettling mechanical hum. And then, I saw it. In the far corner, partially obscured by one of the shrouded shapes, was a single thick black cable. It snaked out of the wall, disappeared behind the stacked containers, and then vanished into the darkness. It looked like a power cord, a heavy-duty one. For what? I took a hesitant step forward, my foot crunching on something small and brittle on the floor. I looked down. It was a shard of what looked like glass, or maybe a ceramic. It was dark, almost a black, and it was scattered across the concrete, like fallen confetti. Sarah's voice, a thin, reedy whisper, cut through the oppressive silence. "John, be careful." My attention snapped back to the whirring sound. It was getting louder. The hum was intensifying. The air in the room felt charged, static. And then, a small red light flickered into existence in the deepest shadows, just beyond the stacked containers. It pulsed, slow and steady, like a tiny, malevolent eye. What in God's name had I just unlocked? What was Sarah hiding? And what was that sound? That pulsing light? The dread that had been simmering beneath the surface all morning now exploded into full-blown terror. I felt a primal urge to slam the door shut, to run, to pretend I had never seen any of this. But I couldn't. I was in too deep. Sarah was in too deep. I took another step forward, my hand outstretched, drawn by an invisible force towards the pulsing red light. The whirring sound was now a distinct drone, vibrating through the floor. The air crackled with an unseen energy, and as my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I saw it more clearly. The source of the red light. It wasn't just a light. It was a small, intricate device, perched atop one of the stacked containers. It had a metallic casing, and the red light was its only indicator. It was sophisticated and utterly alien.
And then, with a sudden, sharp click, the whirring sound stopped. The hum died down. The red light blinked out. The silence that descended was more terrifying than the noise had been. It was a pregnant silence, heavy with unspoken threat. I stood there, frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs. Sarah was right behind me, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "What was that?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. And then, from the absolute darkness beyond the containers, from the very core of the hidden room, I heard a new sound. A soft, almost mechanical rustle, like something unfolding, and a faint, metallic rasp. My blood ran cold. My eyes were wide, straining to pierce the impenetrable darkness. I felt Sarah grab my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. "We need to go, John," she pleaded, her voice trembling uncontrollably. "Now." But my gaze was fixed on the spot where the red light had been. Something was moving. Something was emerging from the shadows. A shape. A form. It was unfolding itself, slowly, deliberately, and as a sliver of light from the main basement bulb caught it, I saw a glint of polished metal and a long, slender, articulated arm. It wasn't human, not entirely. It was something else, something manufactured, and it was reaching out, towards us. The metallic rasp grew louder, a grating sound that scraped against my nerves. I couldn't move. My feet were rooted to the concrete floor, my breath caught in my throat. Sarah's grip tightened, her nails digging into my bicep, a silent, desperate plea to flee. But my eyes were locked on the encroaching shadow.
The articulated arm, segmented and precise, moved with an unnerving fluidity, extending from the unseen mechanism in the depths of the room. It glinted under the meager light, each joint a testament to cold, efficient design. I could feel the air growing colder, a distinct drop in temperature that had nothing to do with the basement's natural chill. It felt like a predator exhaling. Then, with a sudden, jarring lurch, the thing shifted. It wasn't just an arm anymore. A torso began to emerge, blocky and angular, made of dull, dark metal. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, like a poorly programmed automaton. The rasping sound intensified, the sound of metal grinding against metal, amplified in the confined space. It wasn't a creature of flesh and blood, but something born of cold calculation and dangerous intent. And it was coming for us. "John, please," Sarah choked out, her voice raw with a terror that finally broke through my paralysis. That's when the adrenaline hit, a surge of pure, unadulterated fight or flight. My mind, which had been frozen in a state of shock, suddenly snapped into sharp, desperate focus. I yanked my arm free from Sarah's grasp, not out of anger, but out of a primal need to get us both out of this death trap. "Back! Get back!" I yelled, my voice a ragged roar that seemed to startle even myself.
I grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her backward with all my might. We stumbled, her breath a ragged sob against my ear. The thing was still emerging, slowly but inexorably, from the darkness. I could see more of it now, a bulky, featureless head, a single, multifaceted optical sensor that glowed with a faint, eerie blue light. It wasn't just a machine, it felt like an executioner. We scrambled back up the stairs, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. Each step felt like an eternity. The rasping, grinding sound followed us, echoing up the stairwell, a chilling soundtrack to our desperate escape. I didn't dare look back. I couldn't. The image of that metallic limb extending towards us was seared into my mind. At the top of the stairs, I slammed the basement door shut, fumbling with the lock with shaking hands. The metal felt cold and unresponsive. I heard Sarah gasp for air beside me, her body rigid with fear. The bolt, she stammered, pointing a trembling finger at a heavy deadbolt near the doorframe. I slammed the bolt home. It clicked into place with a solid thud, a sound of temporary safety that was both reassuring and utterly inadequate. We stood there, panting, leaning against the closed door, the silence of the kitchen a deafening contrast to the horrors we'd just fled. The mundane familiarity of our kitchen, the polished granite countertops, the stainless steel appliances, the half-eaten bowl of cereal on the counter, felt like a relic from a different planet. My mind was a chaotic storm of questions and dawning realizations. Sarah wasn't just hiding something, she was hiding a weapon of unimaginable power, capable of dispatching whatever threat she believed was out there. The old junk, the assets, the information, it was all a cover. She had built a literal fortress, a vault, to protect what? And who was that thing designed to protect her from? Or was it designed to protect it? What the hell was that, Sarah? I finally managed to choke out, my voice raw and disbelieving. The tremor in my hands was spreading, a full-body earthquake of residual fear. She finally let go of the door and sank onto a kitchen chair, her legs giving out. She looked utterly broken, her face pale and drawn, her eyes wide with a profound and terrible knowledge. "It's a defensive unit," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "A sentinel, developed by the same people I used to work for. It's programmed to protect the contents of the vault, to neutralize any threat." "Neutralize," I echoed, the word hanging heavy and sinister in the air. "You mean kill?" She nodded, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement of her head. Tears streamed down her face, but her expression was one of grim resignation, not just fear. "Yes, John. Kill. It's designed to be lethal." The sheer scaz of it all hit me then. Sarah, my wife, the woman I'd built a life with, had been living a double life. A life steeped in espionage and clandestine operations. A life where she commissioned deadly robots to guard her secrets. And she had kept it all from me. The betrayal, not of trust in the romantic sense, but of the fundamental honesty that underpins a marriage, felt like a physical blow. "And all this time," I said, my voice laced with a bitter disbelief, "you let me think you were just stressed, that you were hiding some petty affair.
I've been accusing you, suspecting you, pushing you away, while you were fighting this." I gestured wildly towards the basement door, my anger warring with a deep, gnawing sense of my own ignorance and stupidity. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a pain that mirrored my own. "I wanted to tell you, John, so many times. But how do you tell your husband that you've been involved in things that could get him killed? That your past is a minefield? I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep you safe by keeping you in the dark. That was my mistake, my biggest mistake." "Your biggest mistake, Sarah. My biggest mistake was not seeing this, not seeing you, not seeing the person you really were." The words were out before I could stop them, a harsh, cruel truth that hung in the air between us. The cinematic drama of the basement confrontation had dissolved into the stark, brutal reality of fractured trust. She flinched, her gaze dropping to her hands, clasped tightly in her lap. "I know," she whispered. "I don't expect you to understand, or to forgive me. I've put you in an impossible position." I walked away from her, pacing the length of the kitchen, trying to process the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. The secrets weren't just secrets. They were dangerous weapons, sentient guardians, and a life I never knew existed. The voicemail that had started this entire nightmare wasn't a lover's plea. It was a warning from a desperate ally, a man who knew the danger she was in. "So that man, he was trying to warn you about that thing? About the Sentinel?" She nodded again, her voice cracking. "Yes. He knew it was active. He knew they were closing in. And he knew that if they got access to what's in that vault, it would be catastrophic." "Catastrophic for who, Sarah? For you? For them? For the world?" My voice was laced with a rising panic. The implications of what she was saying were immense. "For everyone," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's data, highly classified, extremely sensitive data, information that could destabilize governments, ruin economies. It's not meant to be in anyone's hands but the ones who are meant to control it. And if they get it, well, it wouldn't be good." The "they" remained a nebulous, terrifying entity, a shadowy organization with the resources to track her, to threaten her, and to develop terrifying robotic guardians.
It was like a plot from a thriller, but the stakes were terrifyingly real. I stopped pacing and looked at her. The woman I had loved, the woman I had married, was a stranger. A woman forged in the crucible of a dangerous past, a past that had now crashed headlong into our present. Guilt, anger, confusion, and a dawning, chilling fear churned within me. "Why did you do it, Sarah?" I asked, my voice softer now, the raw anger giving way to a profound sadness. "Why this path? Why this life?" She looked up, her eyes meeting mine, and for the first time in a long time, I saw not just a wife, but a soldier, a survivor. There was a weariness in her gaze, a deep, bone-aching exhaustion, but also a flicker of defiance. "I didn't have a choice, John," she said, her voice gaining strength. "When I was younger, I made alliances. I got involved in things I shouldn't have, and sometimes those things have long tentacles. They don't let you go. When my health failed, I thought I could disappear, that I could build a quiet life. But they found me, and they wanted what I had, what I was safeguarding." She gestured to the basement door. "This vault? The Sentinel? It was my only way to keep them at bay, to protect myself, and to protect the information from falling into the wrong hands." I walked over to the basement door, my hand resting on the cold metal. The deadbolt felt flimsy, a child's lock against a monster. The rasping sound, though silenced for now, still echoed in my mind. I could feel the presence of that mechanical guardian, waiting, watching, ready to spring to life. "So, what now, Sarah?" I asked, my voice flat. The dramatic confrontation was over, but the consequences were just beginning to unfold. There was no neat resolution, no easy way out.
We were standing on the precipice of something I couldn't comprehend. She stood up, walking slowly towards me. She didn't touch me, but she stood close, her gaze steady. "Now," she said, her voice firm, "we have to decide what we're going to do. That sentinel? It's a failsafe. It's meant to protect the vault at all costs, but it also means they know we're here. They know it's active. And they'll be coming. Coming for what, Sarah? For you? For the data?" "Both," she said, a grim certainty in her tone. "And when they come, they won't be asking politely. They'll want that data, and they won't care who gets hurt in the process." I looked at the basement door, then at Sarah. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a complex, dangerous stranger. But she was also the woman who had loved me, who had tried to protect me, even if it meant building walls of lies between us. The anger, the shock, the confusion, they were all still there, a tangled mess inside me. But beneath it all, a new emotion was surfacing, a grim, determined resolve. We had been plunged into her world, a world of shadows and danger, and there was no turning back.
"So," I said, my voice low, a quiet strength settling into it. "What do we do?" She looked at me, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Fear, yes, but also a nascent hope. "We fight," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but it held the weight of 1,000 battles. "We fight for our lives, and we figure out how to get out of this alive." I took a deep breath, the air in the kitchen still thick with the metallic tang that seemed to have seeped from the basement itself. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was a sharp, clear awareness. Our life, the comfortable, predictable life I had taken for granted, was over. We were in the middle of a war, and I had just been drafted. The only thing I knew for sure was that I was no longer fighting alone. Whatever came next, we would face it together, even if we were walking into the heart of darkness. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just the secrets, but the strength. And in that moment, the broken pieces of our life began to settle, not into the old picture, but into a new, terrifying, and undeniably shared reality. We were in this, whatever this was, together. And the quiet hum of the sentinel, though silenced for now, was a constant reminder of the fight that lay ahead.